I'm glad to welcome Steve Rogers, the Director of Digital Strategy and the Chief Information Officer with the Toronto Public Library, for tonight's talk, Lessons Learned from a Cyber Attack, Toronto Public Library's Experience. Please join me in giving Steve a warm welcome.
Thanks all. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you all tonight. I'll provide you a bit of the background experience of Toronto Public Library's cybersecurity attack and our subsequent follow-up and lessons learned as well. So first, to set the stage then, I'm not sure if you remember October 28th, 2023. It was a beautiful Saturday, very sunny out. Maybe if you're getting married, it might be a prominent date in your memory. But for me, I know exactly where I was on October 28th, 2023, and I know exactly where I was standing when the phone call came in from a manager of IT security, and I thought it was a bit odd. Often he'd Teams text me, or maybe he'd SMS text me. But this time he phoned me, and I answered the phone, and he just says, "Steve, we've been hit." My heart sank. I thought maybe this day would come one day, but I hoped it wouldn't, but here I was. So TPL had experienced a system-wide cyber attack. The event itself quickly became evident to our ITS team through multiple internal security alerts that came out via emails. Immediately, the staff proactively started to shut down systems to prevent further propagation of what we didn't know at that time that was a malware attack. The action was taken to protect against further propagation I mentioned, and ultimately to preserve the overall integrity of the rest of our systems as well. Within hours, TPL's business continuity plan had been activated, and we had a number of IT staff converging on our data center. And our cyber response plan was initiated. I'll walk you through a little bit first around what our business continuity plan looks like, and then I'll walk you through the event itself. So our response governance model, as we applied immediately, is defined on the screen here, of 3 layers. Our cyber response leadership team consisted of our senior leadership, and this group was responsible for engaging with our breach counsel and cybersecurity experts. We also developed overall organizational communications. Our Library Operations Center, as we define them, is really the core of our business continuity team. And irrespective of whether it's a cybersecurity incident or a business continuity event, what we frame as our Library Operations Center is effectively the core of our business continuity. They maintain communications and liaisons between our operations and emergency communications. And thirdly, our management response team included all of our managers across 100 different branch locations across the city. We had to communicate the event as it was occurring to all of our staff and maintain communications throughout the recovery period. During the first few days of the attack, in fact, our email was disrupted and we couldn't even communicate with our staff via email. So it was essentially text messages, phone calls, and literally pen and paper and driving notices out to 100 different locations across the city. So I noted the business continuity framework, and the core of that, as I mentioned, is our Library Operations Center. This group is made up of various stakeholders from across the business, but also technical specialists as well. They're really essential for maintaining that strong collaboration between the technical recovery in our data center, branch operations, but also maintaining communications with the exec leadership team so they can understand overall what's occurring, what's happening, where we're at. We very also quickly engaged legal counsel, or what we became to understand more precisely as breach counsel. Your breach counsel is really a key consulting party. They provide support during a cyber event. During the early days of the incident, they supported us with communications, legal obligations, privacy, and also technical consultants to assist with the forensic assessment. We engaged cybersecurity specialists on the very first day of the event. We had them converged in our data center as well. And this facilitated through our breach counsel. During this period, we also increased our engagement with the City of Toronto's what was called the Office of the CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer. They've since transitioned the title now to Toronto Cyber Center. The Toronto Cyber Center offered us technical consulting, dark web monitoring, and continues to support the TPL, the Toronto Public Library, with activity monitoring on an ongoing basis through their Security Operations Center on an ongoing basis now, post-cyber incident. So it's important to note that while the cybersecurity incident attack happened on a Saturday, our systems were taken offline across the entire network. All scheduled branch openings continued as business as usual on a Sunday, and every day thereafter until all technology services were fully recovered. TPL staff for sure are resilient, and this event was no exception to that either. During the months that many technology services were offline, all 100 branches remained open. Materials continued to be borrowed. New customers continued to be signed up and registered. And for an extended period, staff resorted to traditional methods of circulation using literally pen and paper. Public Wi-Fi access, though, remained available throughout the cyber event, and we were able to do this because the public Wi-Fi service itself was fully isolated from any of the corporate network environment, as you might imagine. Programming and studying spaces remained available and continued to be used on an ongoing basis. And fortunately also, most e-resources were able to remain online and available. And this is largely because our vendors enabled the authentication protocols to be removed temporarily to be able to continue to provide those services during a cyber event. This was something they hadn't done previously for other customers, but by nature again of the Toronto Public Library, our customer base, they did this for the first time. So in the opening slide, I kind of briefly share with you the initial event discovery process and then ultimately what happened the next 24 hours or so. I'll walk you through the incident response lifecycle. So our approach overall is based on the NIST framework. This model of incident response sort of defines the steps you go through cyber event of this nature. On responding to the cyber attack, the immediate objective was full detection, analysis, and containment. Eradication and recovery didn't actually start for a number of days after the event was discovered. In fact, your focus is on understanding exactly how far has the malware processed and propagated rather throughout the data center, and what exactly has been impacted. Retrospectively, we learned we actually had maintained containment within the first 24 hours of the event being detected. But during the first few days of the event, we didn't understand this and effectively had to operate as if the threat actors were potentially still inside our environment. So it was through this forensic investigation that we're able to understand, through assessing log files, collected and detailed analysis of individual systems, that we recognized that we had actually shut down their propagation and then effectively turned our efforts towards the recovery process. So this started with first a focus on the data center itself. So every system was assumed to be compromised. Regardless whether it demonstrated or had symptoms of being compromised or not, we effectively just deemed every system in the data center as compromised. So as a result, the process to recover started at the ground up, literally. We effectively built the network again from the ground up, in parallel. We rebuilt new network segments, new VLANs, and essentially built a parallel data center network inside the data center, fully isolated from what was our original network environment, and to keep that segregation so there could be no propagation that we weren't necessarily aware of from the contaminated systems across to the new systems we were restoring. Systems were restored or recovered in a quarantine process, so they're effectively restored to an airlocked situation or network. So systems were recovered, restored into a quarantine network for a period of a few days. They were left isolated there for a few days. During that period of time, we ran forensic tools across these systems to watch for any unusual activity, and then ultimately we'd migrate those systems then restored into the new clean network environment. So through the collaboration restoration with the business against our Library Operations Center, we worked through a prioritized process to identify what systems for the business were the highest priority, and then focused on restoring those services first. As you can understand as well, there's obviously a network or a connection between the system the business thinks they're restoring and all the interconnected components that make up that system to make it actually operate. So it's a complex process to work through. Enhancements we applied through the recovery process include improved firewall network security controls, network isolation, improved port blocking, hardened server security policies and procedures. We improved overall patch management regime as we went through the restoration process, and ultimately enhanced our log management as well, coming out of the cybersecurity incident, and ultimately adopted Microsoft Sentinel to capture our logs from an ongoing security operations center perspective on an ongoing basis. As we began to gain progress in the data center, we then started to move out into the branch locations and extended the recovery out to every endpoint throughout the entire network. So at this point, again, no staff were authorized to turn any systems on in terms of their workstations, desktop, laptops, and so forth, until they'd been fully analyzed. Because we didn't have our usual endpoint management tools in place, because they'd effectively been deemed compromised, we sent staff out to every single one of our branch locations with USB sticks and tools on those USB sticks to do analysis of every workstation individually. And products including Binalize, which is like a forensic analysis tool. And so we can run that tool on each workstation, look for any malware or any unusual software in those machines. And surprisingly, malware was actually identified on random workstations across the network. Now, the presence of the malware itself or these tools in of itself is innocuous if it's not being used, but the fact that it was present meant that the threat actors effectively entered our network environment, and then I suspect in the effect that they had been identified and locked out, they left some tools behind, but not necessarily in the data center on our servers per se, but placed these tools at random workstations. So I presume then that the attempt would be that if they got locked out and they found a way back in again in the future, they just pick up where they left off if we just turn everything back on again. And they left the toolbox behind effectively. So other enhancements that were made then in the workstations where we applied or deployed Microsoft Defender for endpoint security as well as part of that overall rebuild of the endpoint devices. Collectively, as I mentioned, dozens of enterprise applications and services were disrupted, resulting in a cyber attack. And most impactful to customers at large was the ability for TPL to host a website and associated functionalities that go with that as well. Public computing is also a heavily used service through the Toronto Public Library to meet the needs of many Torontonians who don't otherwise have access to computer workstation. And perhaps most significantly, circulation services of physical materials were significantly disrupted for many months. Materials checked out were recorded manually by hand during this period of time, and all this was to maintain ongoing service continuity. So due to the complexity of TPL's website and discovery platform, that is the catalog, full restoration transpired over a few months. We weren't able to do it in sort of a one step per se. We had to evolve the recovery over time. Phased restoration has included bringing the public computing services back online again, and we had been working on an upgrade to our public computing registration management software for a period of time. And so we kind of took this opportunity actually to, rather than do a phased migration, we went through a big bang approach and just brought the service back online again under the new system, kind of at one day across 2,000 public workstations. In the first week, we had 9,000 computer sessions booked when the service came back online again, kind of indicating the demand that built up from the community. Circulation services, as I mentioned, was phased back in over a period of time. And collectively, during the cyber event, we were able to continue to loan materials, and we could return them again, but we couldn't check them back in to be recirculated again. So 1.4 million materials were returned during the period of time our integrated library system was offline. We had to store those materials for a period of time until we could restore all the services. And so those were collected ultimately and put into trailers. 15 tractor trailers, in fact, were used to store all the returned materials that came in during this period of time. And 23,000 boxes of materials were hosted across our branch network as well. So it's quite a substantial activity then to bring the material back into circulation again, check all those materials back in again, back into integrated library system, and then make them once again available again to our customer base. So collectively, in the 3 weeks that it took to bring our library system back online again, and again it's a phased process, we processed 1.4 million individual physical items back into the library system again. That's analogous to every household in Toronto returning at least one item back to the library again. But in addition to that, also every household in Hamilton as well, also returning an item. So it gives you the size of the volume of materials that we had to process. 620,000 items were processed through our central sorter location out in Scarborough. And that took place over a period of a couple of weeks. That required our staff to work 12-hour days. And we processed probably about 20 to 25,000 items per day typically. This is around 30 to 35,000 items per day being processed. But a peak day like that is not unusual, perhaps after a long weekend, but doing it back to back, 12-hour days, 3 weeks, 21 days straight for the team, was a significant load at the time to get everything back online as quickly as possible. And it required a lot of our branch staff to come in and sort of do shifts per se in a central sorter location just to help the volume get through as quickly as possible. So during the cyber event, we tried to maintain its communications as best we could, both through our social media platforms, but also through the public media as well. One of the areas that we were most surprised at, in fact, though, as we began to bring the systems back online again, we shared a short video clip at the time of our central sorter operating in our Scarborough location. And it received over 100,000 hits, or likes rather, I should say, on Instagram, and lots of messages that people wanted to see more of what happens behind the scenes in a library environment. So our media team for sure will show more of that in the future. As I mentioned, there were a number of media publications at the time around the cybersecurity event. And one of the areas that touched us the most was that during the first couple of days of the cyber event occurring in the public library, the media sentiment seemed to be somewhat like, how did the library allow this to happen? What were they doing? And it was really very much the public sentiment that seemed to shift that particular perspective of the public media. Very quickly, customers, in terms of sharing their own thoughts around why would somebody attack the public library? Why would somebody take my public library offline? And those sentiments were sort of, I think, recognized by the public media. And in turn, the way they positioned their stories also started to shift quite dramatically. And I can tell you that the staff really felt that warmth from the community at large during this time. It was hard for them to function without technology tools and deliver services in a consistent manner for months on end. But very much there was a lot of love coming out there from the public at large, and I can tell you that was very much appreciated. We received a lot of inquiries from the media as well at the time around where are these mythical tractor trailers that are holding all these library materials, and ultimately gave the exclusive to CBC, and you can see there's a photograph there. They actually published in the end, after many requests to see these mythical tractor trailers, they did an article on as we were nearing recovery. So just to close then, lessons learned and takeaways. So develop proactive business continuity plans. And I know that you've heard that many times probably, but it really goes without saying. Establish a central liaison team. So in our case, we call it the Library Operations Center, and we use that as a consistent team, whether it be an emergency weather event or a cyber event or some other kind of emergency event that applies across the entire system. We activate our business continuity team. Assess the incident impact and severity. And so those first few days of our event, as I mentioned, the cybersecurity event, we had to first forensically understand the nature of the event, how far had the impact progressed before we can begin the recovery process, and then do it in a phased manner and engagement with the business to understand what's their priority in terms of service recovery. Create recovery plans. So I can tell you that our cybersecurity response plan was used in the first few days of the event. Now, it's used to get you started. From there, every event's going to be different and fluid. But very much, that's the rule book we opened up and we sat in the data center and said, okay, what do we do first? That's the rule book you look to in the moment. And provide regular progress updates. So speak to your stakeholders. We try to speak to the community at large yourselves through our social media platforms, for example, through our online website, but other stakeholders as well. In our case, the Mayor's Office, the City of Toronto, we provide regular updates to them also to keep them informed about our progress overall, what was going on, and what was happening. And ultimately, conduct a post-incident analysis. So once you've recovered, and you will, understand what worked well and what might you tweak or change going forward in the future for business continuity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. We are opening the floor to We're opening the floor to a quick Q&A, so anybody has any questions, please try to keep your questions brief, and online participants, please drop a Q in the chat.
A few times in the presentation you mentioned the data center, and I was just curious, is the Toronto Public Library infrastructure run on hardware that you own? It's not in the cloud and so on?
We have a hybrid environment. We have both infrastructure on-premise in a physical data center. We also run a number of systems online in the cloud as well. We're a Microsoft shop primarily, so primarily Microsoft Azure, but we do a combination of both. In this case, in our particular cyber incident, it occurred only within our physical data center. It didn't transgress into our cloud environment, fortunately.
Okay. It's a bit cheeky, but you're sticking with Microsoft?
So since everything is moving to digital, we must be losing our knowledge about how to do things with pen and paper. Does the library take proactive steps to maintain that knowledge?
You know, I think nobody's more passionate about the physical material, I'd say, than a library professional. They take a lot of librarians. We married a librarian for almost 30 years, so I can say this, I think, in no offense, but librarianship, it truly is a real profession, and I'm awed by librarians I work with every day. I'm not a librarian myself, but I think the pen and paper or the physical material per se is still going first and foremost every librarian's mind, for sure.
Paul's question, first question, what were the business pressures that kept your backups happening? How much confidence do you have that the backups would work?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question again, Brian, if you could?
What were the business pressures that kept your backups happening? How much confidence did you have that the backups would work?
Business pressures?
What were the business pressures that kept your backups happening?
Yeah. The business pressures. So I think if I can interpret the question correctly, is like, I'll maybe speak to our backup environment. So, so step one, I guess, I would say is we first, now in our particular case, our backup environment was not corrupted, not compromised, rather, I should say. That being said, obviously, when we did our restores of system or data from the backup environment, as you can imagine, if malware has been in your environment for some time, it's going to be backed up and restored along with that restore as well. So I spoke also in the presentation around that kind of isolated area or zone, per se, network segmentation. So when we did a restore of a system from a recoverable state, part of that quarantine process was making sure that we had evaluate that system before we move back into production environment again. Coming out of this event as well, we have since also worked to improve our overall backup architecture. So while obviously our backup architecture was working well during the time of the event itself, again, we've learned from this experience to understand what other technologies are available in the industry per se to create even more effective backup solutions, immutable backup, and we now have we kind of follow the model, the framework now, the 3-2-1. That kind of you have, probably many of you are not, I'm seeing nodding, kind of understand the 3-2-1 framework to backup, and we've changed our technologies also since recovering from a cyber event. Again, our backup technologies, despite the fact that they worked well at the time, we realize there's opportunities for us to further improve, and we've done so.
You said you just changed your backup strategies. What changes did you make going forward?
So so historically, I should say, our backup strategy was local backup, but also offsite backup as well. So we had effectively data in 2 locations. The 3-2-1 framework, not to get into too much technical detail per se, but involves a third essential instance of your backup as well. So I'd say when I say we've kind of improved our framework is we've become more aligned with the modern approach to 3-2-1 framework of immutable backup. And we have backup now in multiple locations and able to recover for different in different speeds, so I should say, depending on the nature of where it's being hosted, where that physical backup, or that backup, not physical necessarily, but that backup is located. So as I say, we had a backup in place historically that was certainly functional and working on-site and off-site as well. We've just taken it to the next level now, I'd say, to make it more industry aligned with modern standards.
Thank you very much. You gave an immaculate presentation. But do you think with all of the measures discussed, the library is still prepared for the next attack? If it's coming, hopefully not.
So just to repeat the question, I think the question, to reframe it differently if I can, is can I say to the board that it won't ever happen again? The answer is no, I can't. I don't think any CIO can say to the board anywhere that we'll never be attacked or there'll never be a cybersecurity incident. What I can say, though, is that are we better prepared for any subsequent attack on the library? And to that, I can absolutely say, yes, we are. We have immeasurably changed our cybersecurity posture since this event in multiple different ways. I won't go into all the details, obviously, but suffice to say that there has been subsequent attempts on Toronto Public Library since this event to breach our cybersecurity posture since this time. And so far, they have not been successful. So takeaways I would say to any organization in terms of, again, our lessons learned is increase your overall awareness of your environment. And I think that's an area where TPL has significantly matured since this event, with a much richer understanding of what's happening in the network all the time. And the public library itself is also a little bit an unusual beast, maybe similar to perhaps a university like University of Toronto, in that we have a combination of we're serving technology to both internal corporate staff, but also serving technology to external public customers through public Wi-Fi, through public computers. And interesting and ironically, when you serve public technology, there'll be people out in the public who are going to try and use that technology back against you. So not necessarily coming at you online per se, but even trying to attempt to breach your cyber defenses through your physical technology in branch locations as well. But I would say, I can't ever say to the board it'll never happen again, but I can absolutely say that if in subsequent attempts that occurred again with the Toronto Public Library, we're far better positioned to detect and also respond resiliently to a subsequent attack.
We have one more question here.
Hi there. So the same day that Black Rasta hit you guys, the British Library got hit, and 4.5 months later, they released a 18-point disclosure and recommendations. They also released the costs of the damage. We have one Freedom of Information request saying the costs were over $1 million, $750,000 from outside consultants. Is there ever going to be like a full transparent report of what actually happened and how much it cost?
So we have published a public report. It's available online on Toronto Public Library's website with respect to the summary of the information that TPL is able to share around the nature of the event. And I think you've already summarized it in your comments.
So no.
I think Toronto Public Library has been very transparent with information related to the attack, as I say, and there's a public report that's been published online. It's available for community to look at. It's published on our website.
Okay. Thank you so much for your talk, Steve.
Thank you.